My husband's family and I have a complicated history, especially with my mother-in-law. To provide some context, my husband Kyle is the younger of two children in his family and has always been viewed as the favored child, despite having an older sister. My mother-in-law, Monica, is a clinical narcissist who always made everything about herself. She would even demand gifts on birthdays, claiming her children wouldn't exist without her. Kyle has shared with me that growing up, his achievements were always overshadowed by his mother's need for attention. Initially, when I began dating Kyle and visiting their home, my mother-in-law seemed pleasant enough, but her behavior deteriorated as our relationship grew more serious. Over the years, she became increasingly difficult, especially after we decided to marry 3 years ago. Planning our wedding became a nightmare because of my mother-in-law interference. Thankfully, Kyle and I had agreed early on to finance the wedding ourselves to prevent family members from taking over. When my mother-in-law tried to change our wedding plans, suggesting alterations to the venue layout, I politely declined her ideas. She complained to Kyle, who tried to mediate and find a compromise, but I insisted that our decisions were final. For our wedding, I envisioned a casual, non-religious celebration with a mismatched bridal party featuring a loose color palette. The only thing I had requested from my mother-in-law and the rest of my bridesmaids was to choose a dress within our color palette and show it to me before purchasing. My mother and the other bridesmaids complied, showing me their choices without issue. However, my mother-in-law never showed me any options despite my repeated requests leading up to the wedding. On the day of the event, to everyone's shock, my mother-in-law arrived wearing an off-white dress, a medium-length outfit with a transparent chiffon layer and a bolero. She looked smugly triumphant as she noticed my reaction, which left me in tears. Immediately, my husband intervened and asked her to change or leave. Unfortunately, my father-in-law didn't want to drive her back and ended up arguing with my husband. Eventually, to keep the peace, I reluctantly allowed my mother-in-law to stay in her dress. The situation was incredibly embarrassing for our guests, who were clearly surprised by her attire. Throughout the wedding, I ignored her completely and didn't exchange a single word. My husband, aware of my distress, urged me to let it go, reminding me that no matter what, I was the bride. However, his lack of understanding regarding the inappropriateness of his mother's choice upset me deeply. I eventually forgave her, although she never apologized for her actions. Her narcissism didn't stop there. When we were trying to conceive, it was a challenging time for us, especially after experiencing a miscarriage. Naturally, I was quite nervous when I found out I was pregnant again. Kyle was thrilled about becoming a dad and supported me throughout, attending every doctor's appointment, reading parenting books together, and even setting up a lovely nursery for our baby-to-be. 2 months later, we felt ready to share our exciting news with our families and close friends. We wanted to ensure we passed the critical first trimester before spreading the joy. We hosted a lunch gathering, inviting our parents, close family, and friends. As they noticed my growing stomach, their expressions shifted to joy and amazement. My mother teared up with happiness when she confirmed my pregnancy and understood why we had kept it private. She was thrilled about becoming a grandmother. However, Kyle's mother, Monica, had a starkly different reaction. Instead of sharing in the joy, she responded angrily upon learning that we had kept the pregnancy a secret. She felt left out and accused me of intentionally excluding her, disregarding our reasons for waiting to share the news. Despite my efforts to explain our reasons, Monica remained visibly upset and refused further engagement with me. Her disapproval overshadowed what should have been a joyful occasion. Throughout the evening, she ignored me and displayed disrespect not only towards me but also towards my mother, who had always been kind to her in the past. Monica remained withdrawn, buried in her phone during conversations while everyone else engaged in the family gathering. It was clear she was upset, openly expressing her feelings of being left out of knowing about my pregnancy sooner. Her discontentment was palpable and added tension to the evening. As her frustration became more apparent, my husband and his brother noticed. The tension escalated until I reached a breaking point and stepped out to gather myself. My mother, noticing my distress, came to comfort me until I felt composed enough to return. Towards the end of the night, Monica made a deliberate effort to say goodbye to me, highlighting her disapproval and the strain on our relationship. As the day came to a close, Monica's interactions with me were limited to mere greetings. Later, when my husband escorted them to their car, a heated argument erupted that I could hear clearly from the foyer. Monica seized the opportunity to escalate her complaints about me, venting her frustrations. By then, all our guests had left, leaving just my parents, Kyle, and his parents. Monica angrily expressed disbelief that I had kept the pregnancy from her, insisting that I didn't consider her family at all. In response, my husband calmly explained that we both wanted to ensure everything was safe before sharing the news with everyone. Monica's reaction intensified into yelling, insisting that as the grandmother, she deserved to know from the start. She criticized my husband for letting me dictate things and challenged his trust in her. Kyle, embarrassed and miserable, faced his mother as she continued her tirade. Tears streamed down my face as Monica's sharp words left me hurt and bewildered. I tried to intervene, but my mother stopped me, warning that any response from me would only escalate the situation further. She was right. I knew Monica was looking for a fight. Despite my mother-in-law provocations, I refused to engage and kept my mouth shut. She persisted in insisting that Kyle should see things her way and accused me of controlling him. My father-in-law eventually intervened, calming her down and driving her away. Unfortunately, this behavior wasn't isolated. It was just one instance in a long list of entitlement and overreactions. For example, she tried to get our baby to call her Ma instead of Grandma, which infuriated me. She would also boast about babysitting and helping us excessively, exaggerating her role. During my post-pregnancy health issues, she criticized my mothering skills and urged me to prioritize her grandchild over myself. Despite these challenges, I tolerated her for the sake of my husband. Recently, my in-laws moved to a new place and kept inviting us to visit. Kyle encouraged me to go alone with our child, Debbie, to appease his mother, who was persistently asking him to visit. Reluctantly, I agreed and planned a visit on a weekend when Debbie had a friend's birthday party. On a sunny Friday afternoon, I dropped Debbie off at the party and headed to my in-laws' new home. The property was impressive, indicating my father-in-law had invested heavily for retirement. The house blended modern and classic styles, set in a beautiful yard with lush greenery and fragrant flowers. When I arrived and rang the doorbell, my mother-in-law opened the door with excitement, assuming it was Kyle. Her expression quickly changed when she saw it was just me, and she asked where Kyle and Debbie were. I explained to my mother-in-law that Kyle had an appointment and Debbie was attending her friend's birthday party, which clearly upset her. She began complaining about our apparent selfishness in not finding time to spend with her. Awkwardly, I changed the topic by expressing interest in checking out her new place. Inside, the house was just as impressive as the exterior. The entrance boasted high ceilings and tasteful decorations. My sister-in-law, Haley, and her 11-year-old son, Jake, were also present. I greeted them warmly, though Haley, like her mother, seemed distant towards me. It was hard to tell if it was personal or to appease her mother. My mother-in-law explained that my father-in-law was out with friends, so she had invited Haley and Jake over for some quality time. I nodded politely and tried to engage with Jake by asking about school. However, my mother-in-law abruptly shifted the conversation to her recent clothing purchases, expressing a desire for my advice on her new wardrobe. This caught me off guard, as she had never sought my advice before. I managed a polite response, agreeing to help. Despite our complicated history, I decided to embrace the opportunity to bond over something as simple as fashion. She seemed pleased and led me to her pride and joy, her newly built walk-in closet. As we admired her extensive collection of clothes, shoes, and accessories, she eagerly sought my opinions on colors, styles, and accessories. It felt surreal given our rocky relationship, but I did my best to provide thoughtful suggestions and be helpful. My mother-in-law encouraged me to check out her closet, saying she would be right back. As I was looking through her new clothes, I heard the sound of running feet behind me. Before I could react, Jake, with mischievous laughter, gave me a push, causing me to stumble and fall face first into the closet. The impact left my head and teeth hurting, and I was initially disoriented. As I gathered my senses, I realized that Jake had swiftly locked the closet door behind me, plunging me into darkness. Panic set in as I felt confined and terrified, desperately banging on the door and calling out for mother-in-law and Sil for help. My pleas seemed to go unheard, or perhaps they were choosing to ignore my distress. Frantically, I fumbled for my phone and managed to switch on the flashlight. But my anxiety grew as I noticed my battery was low. My childhood fear of darkness resurfaced, stemming from a traumatic incident where I accidentally locked myself in my grandmother's closet during a game of hide and seek, and she struggled to find me due to her hearing impairment. Despite my repeated attempts to reach mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I was met with silence, which intensified my sense of isolation. Confused and desperate, I finally dialed my husband's number. When Kyle answered casually, I explained the dire situation with desperation in my voice. He seemed unfazed and asked for more details. I recounted how Jake had pushed me into the closet and locked me inside with the lights off. I pleaded for help as I continued to bang on the door. No one had come to rescue me, and my fear of dark spaces was escalating. When I called Kyle for help, hoping for sympathy, he responded coldly, dismissing my distress as non-emergency and instructing me to call his mother instead. Frustrated, I explained that I had already tried calling both his mother and sister multiple times without success. With my phone battery draining rapidly from using the flashlight, I pleaded with Kyle to come over, reminding him of my fear of darkness that he knew well. However, Kyle remained unmoved, stating he was too busy to come and suggesting I find someone else to help. Stunned and increasingly panicked, I continued to bang on the closet door and call out to mother-in-law and sister-in-law, but their phones remained silent. Feeling trapped and helpless, I reluctantly dialed my father-in-law, Phil, the only person left I could reach out to. Despite knowing he had been out with friends, I hoped he would answer. He picked up, and I nervously explained the situation, disclosing that Jake had locked me in the closet. Despite my attempts to reach out for help, no one was responding. When I finally managed to contact Phil, he assured me he would rush home and was surprised that neither mother-in-law nor sister-in-law had heard my calls all this time. After what felt like an eternity, I heard voices outside, Phil yelling instructions to unlock the closet door. Relief washed over me as I realized help was finally arriving. The door creaked open, flooding the dark space with light. Phil and Sil stood there, their faces a mix of concern and frustration. I emerged from the closet feeling disoriented, but immensely grateful to be free from that confined space. Phil demanded an explanation from mother-in-law about why I had been locked in her closet. Mother-in-law feigned innocence, but I recounted the incident, explaining how Jake had pushed me in and locked the door. To my dismay, both mother-in-law and sister-in-law scoffed at my account, dismissing it entirely and claiming Jake would never do such a thing. Frustrated and angry, I demanded to know why they hadn't responded to my calls or banging on the door. Their excuse was that they were in the backyard, with mother-in-law showing off her new rose garden to Haley and Jake. I turned my anger towards Jake, questioning him directly about why he had locked me inside. Sil interrupted, vehemently defending her son and accusing me of fabricating the story. Their blatant lies left me feeling overwhelmed with frustration and disbelief, especially as it didn't explain how the lights had been turned off. Phil attempted to calm me down, but I knew that mother-in-law and sister-in-law would continue to defend each other regardless of what I said. Defeated and hurt, I realized that the situation was unlikely to be resolved to my satisfaction. When I returned home, still trembling with shock, I called my mother to apologize for not picking up Debbie and explained she might need to stay at their place for the night. I was too shaken to explain what had happened just yet. Waiting for my husband to return, I anticipated confronting him about his family's actions. During dinner, I recounted the incident to my husband, hoping for understanding. Instead, he berated me, accusing me of overreacting and being childish. He dismissed my concerns, refusing to believe that his family would intentionally mistreat me. Gaslighting me, he justified why he couldn't come to help, making me doubt myself. To avoid further conflict, I retreated to bed, feeling profoundly lonely and misunderstood. The weight of the incident lingered heavily, compounded by the dismissiveness from my husband. The next day, while grappling with the emotional aftermath, I received a TikTok link from my cousin. Horrified, I watched the video showing my nephew, Jake, recording the incident and shamelessly sharing it as a prank on TikTok. Seeing Jake's laughter enraged me, and I shared the video in our family chat, demanding apologies now that I had proof. Mother-in-law brushed off the seriousness, claiming it was funny, and sister-in-law echoed her sentiments, dismissing it as a harmless prank. Frustrated, I warned them that if Jake didn't remove the video, I would take legal action. Mother-in-law dismissive response and lack of empathy pushed me over the edge. Frustrated and determined to make them understand the seriousness of the situation, I took action. I immediately called the police, providing them with the TikTok video as evidence. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, the police agreed to visit sister-in-law and question her about her 11-year-old child having a TikTok account and posting such prank videos. Silk called me angrily, questioning my audacity for filing a complaint against her. I stood my ground, informing her that I was prepared to take legal action. When she continued to yell, I calmly mentioned that I was recording the conversation and would share it with my lawyer. This silenced her, highlighting the severity of the situation. I felt a sense of justice in teaching my husband's family a lesson for their actions, ensuring they understood the consequences of locking me inside a closet for over an hour. Update 1. In just a few hours, I've received thousands of comments, and I'm grateful that the majority understand why I involved the police. My in-laws have been calling me repeatedly, urging me to withdraw my statement to the police. As of now, no official case has been filed since my nephew is still a child, and the police are investigating to determine the appropriate course of action. When my husband returned from work, he erupted upon learning about the situation. He had tried calling me during the day, but was unable to reach me due to my involvement with the police. Kyle believes that my actions have irreparably damaged the family and insists that I am overreacting to what he views as harmless behavior from Jake, citing his age as justification for not punishing him. I've discussed this with my parents and my sister, all of whom are shocked by the lack of response from my husband and his family, especially given my fear of dark spaces. My dad had a serious conversation with my husband, emphasizing that if I had called for help while trapped in the closet, it was his responsibility to either come to my aid or immediately involve his parents to get me out. The fact that he did neither is troubling to me and my family. Update 2. It's been a week since my last update, and there has been a significant development. Sister-in-law husband, Vic, who was out of town, returned and learned about the incident between me and Jake. He was furious and immediately demanded that Jake take down the video and apologize to me in person. Vic visited me to discuss the situation further. When Vic arrived at our place with Jake, the atmosphere was tense. Jake looked remorseful, as if he had been severely scolded. Vic gave him a stern look, and Jake promptly apologized to me. During our conversation, Jake revealed that while he did push me into the closet, he felt pressured by mother-in-law. He explained that he used to share prank videos with mother-in-law, and when he expressed hesitation about trying them on family members, mother-in-law encouraged him by suggesting I wasn't technically family since I was just married to my husband. This appalling revelation shocked me. Vic asked Jake if he was being truthful, emphasizing the seriousness of the accusation. Jake broke down in tears, inviting us to check his phone, where we found conversations confirming mother-in-law encouragement of these actions. After saving the screenshots to my phone, I advised Jake strongly against following mother-in-law suggestions, emphasizing that it was inappropriate and wrong. Jake nodded solemnly, and Vic expressed his dismay, acknowledging how sickening the situation was and reconsidering allowing his child to be around mother-in-law. Understanding Vic's concerns, I assured him that I would discuss the matter with my lawyer and the police. However, I emphasized that I would retract my statement on the condition that Jake never uploaded the video again or retained a copy of it. Jake confirmed that he had deleted the video and no longer had a copy. Since my conversation with Vic and Jake, I've begun to question my entire relationship with mother-in-law. It's now clear that she orchestrated the incident and encouraged a child to act on her behalf, which is deeply troubling. I cannot allow myself to be around someone who harbors such animosity towards me and is willing to go to such lengths. Moving forward, I am committed to protecting myself and ensuring that mother-in-law actions do not go unchecked. Update 3. Hello everyone. It's been 4 months since my last update. I've moved out of my husband's place and am currently staying with my parents. As previously updated, my mother-in-law was indeed behind everything. When I confronted her with the screenshots, she initially denied her involvement, claiming my nephew must have manipulated them. However, her lies quickly unraveled when I threatened legal action. Eventually, she begrudgingly admitted to pre-planning the incident with my nephew. She confessed that she saw my visit as the perfect opportunity to play the prank on me. Mother-in-law even claimed that sister-in-law was in on it and enjoyed hearing my distress. She pleaded with me not to pursue legal action, promising it would never happen again. Fortunately, I had recorded our entire conversation. I ended the call with her and forwarded the voice recording to our group chats so everyone could hear mother-in-law admission. I also messaged sister-in-law, expressing my disappointment and hoping her son would grow up to be a better person. As for my husband, our relationship deteriorated further each day. Despite the screenshots and voice recording of his own mother's admission, he never apologized for what his family put me through. Seeing my family rally behind me helped me realize I wasn't overreacting and that what happened was deeply wrong. It's been a big deal for me, even though I decided not to pursue legal action. I couldn't forgive or forget what his family did to me. After everything that happened and my husband's continued support for them, I realized there was no way forward for our marriage. I tried to salvage it, but when your own partner stands by his mother's hurtful actions despite your feelings, you start to realize you deserve better. I moved out so we could begin divorce proceedings. Surprisingly, he didn't seem shocked when I told him I wanted a divorce and didn't fight me on it. It's been incredibly difficult to go through this. I truly loved my husband and imagined a future with him. But these past few months have been eye-opening. I deserve to prioritize myself. I'm grateful to everyone in the comments section and my family for helping me see the truth about my husband and his family. It's a tough journey, but I'm focusing on what's best for me now.